All right, welcome everyone. We are ready to get started with our Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant, a discussion about the current FOAs that are out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jarl Crocker, our Director of Training and Technical Assistance, to introduce who we have today and get us started. Jarl?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're calling in from. And again, the purpose of this webinar is to talk through some of the technical details of the second round of funding for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant. And so just to quickly run through our agenda, and then we'll just jump right in. We'll go through some of the highlights of the details of the recently released FOA. And really the purpose of this is to have a discussion, so we'll use the slides as a quick reference point, but this is really an opportunity for all of you to hopefully get some questions answered, especially around some of the more technical details of the grant application. And we have two network experts with us, and Biz, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good morning or good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Biz Steinberg. And I am the current third vice chair on the Partnership Board of Directors from Region 9 here in California. I have been an education coordinator, Head Start director, and the CEO of Community Action Partnership. We have large programs in Head Start, Early Head Start, Migrant and Seasonal Head Start, as well as state child development programs. So I hope I will be able to be of some help for those of you who are just beginning to get your feet wet with Early Head Start and are venturing possibly to some new partnerships to offer these very needed services in your rural, urban, or suburban community. Thank you, Jarl.
Thanks, Biz. And we also are joined by Jim Masters, and Jim is still signing up and getting his audio up and running, but Jim is a longtime member of the Community Action Network and has done extensive work with Head Start, Early Head Start, and Child Care Centers. And so collectively, we will be here to answer your questions, hopefully provide some peer-to-peer support. And also, since this is a very technical grant application, this isn't the last time we can offer assistance to you. Again, this is something that the partnership does on behalf of its members. So if you have any follow-up questions for today or have any additional questions as you continue to write the grant, please feel free to reach out directly to me. You can see my email address up there on the front of the screen, jcrocker@communityactionpartnership.com, and I will either try to help answer your question or refer you to Biz, Jim, or another expert within the network, again, to help you with that grant application process. So with that said, Kasha, why don't you advance us to the next slide? Again, the purpose is to use these slides to just sketch out the big picture about some of the grant requirements, but really spend the balance of the time answering your questions, especially again about some of those more technical details of the grant application. So again, there is $135 million in total funding to expand access to high-quality, comprehensive early learning services for low-income infants and toddlers and their families. And according to the FOA, the funds will be distributed at least 40% for the expansion of Early Head Start without the child care partnerships, at least 40% for those Early Head Start child care partnerships. And then applicants also have the opportunity to do both. So you can expand Head Start and also apply for that Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. And again, this is open to both new and existing grantees. So Kasha, next slide. So let's do a quick overview of each of those options. Again, for those Early Head Start Child Care expansion applicants, the partnerships will provide full-day, full-year comprehensive services to meet the needs of working families. And again, I think these are important things to keep in mind as you're doing your grant application, making sure that you hit each of these bullets as they're laid out in the FOA. And again, these slides are taken directly from the FOA. The next purpose is, again, to enhance access to high-quality full-time child care, also support the development of infants and toddlers through strong relationship-based experiences, prepare them for the transition to preschool. There's also a requirement to leverage current investments through that Child Care Development Fund or other sources to improve quality. And I think Biz and Jim can also provide some more technical insight about those different financing strategies that you can use. And then lastly, you have to operationalize services to ensure there's no segregation or stigmatization of those EHS-CC partnership children due to additional requirement or services. And we'll get into some of those more specific requirements in a couple of slides. Cashin, next slide. For the applicants who are just applying for that early Head Start expansion, again, the objective is to provide early, continuous, intensive, and comprehensive child development and family support services that enhance the physical, social, emotional, and intellectual development of participating children, support parents to support parental efforts to fulfill their parental roles and move towards self-sufficiency, and it also requires applicants provide full-day, full-year model care with at least 1,380 hours minimum of services per year. And Cashin, next slide. And then lastly, there's the option of applying for both the partnership and the early Head Start expansion. If we can advance one more, there we go. So before we get into the criteria, and again, this is where Biz and Jim, I think, can provide much more detailed support around some of these different financing strategies, especially also around the different partnerships that you can pursue. Are there any big picture questions? And Cashin, again, let folks know the best way to either raise their hand or go ahead and ask those questions over the phone.
Sure. So this is a slightly different setup than we have for lots of our webinars. You are able to use that raise your hand feature to alert us that you would like to ask a question by being unmuted. If you are feeling shy and do not wish to be unmuted for your question, you can always put it into the chat window and we will read them off, but do encourage you to make this a discussion. Because there's help from our experts here as well as possibly some peer-to-peer. So ask away.
All right, so again, before we get into the specifics of the criteria, are there any big picture questions or specific issues that you would like Biz or Jim to address? And Cashin, do we have any raised hands?
Not at this point.
All right. So let's go through some of these specific criteria, again, and talk in a little bit more detail about some strategies for your application. So again, the FOA criteria mentions that they are the Office of Head Start is looking to target zip codes with high concentrations of poverty and promise zones. So if you're an agency in a promise zone, you should definitely call that out in your application, and you should also make reference to your needs assessment, especially for a comparison of child poverty rates in your service area compared to your region and your state. So again, they're really trying to target in the applicants with high concentrations, especially of early childhood poverty. So making sure you reference your needs assessment numbers, and you can also use the Community Action Partnership's Community Commons website to get more recent data on the level of childhood poverty in your communities. Next, the awards are based on how effectively the model design fits the needs of the community to be served. So again, and it also asks to reference any needs assessment and your strategic plan. So again, it's important to tie in anything in both of those planning processes that are related to, especially again, early childhood poverty, and also making sure that you're referencing any activities you already have going on in your strategic plan that involve partnerships, work with child care centers, Head Start, early Head Start, But especially, again, talking about your needs assessment and how it's identified different types of needs that you'll be addressing through the grant application. Applicants will also be prioritized based on service options that meet the needs of working families and families with parents in training or education programs. So again, if you have those additional types of services, if you have a two-generation model that your agency uses, or if you have, for example, workforce development programs, or you partner with other workforce development organizations in your community that already serve your early Head Start or child care center parents, that's very important to make sure you reference that in your grant. The FOA also says they will prioritize organizations that seek to develop a unified birth-to-school entry continuum through alignment of federal, state, and locally funded early care and education programs and improve overall capacity of the community to offer high-quality care. So again, making sure you reference any child care quality work that you're also doing. And again, maybe at this point we can stop and turn it over to Biz and Jim to talk a little bit more about the financing strategies that you might potentially use, and also take questions around some of those issues around how you would write in your grant what kind of financing strategies you're going to use. So Biz, you had talked earlier about some of the strategies that you use in California. Could you talk a little bit about how you finance similar programs?
Certainly, and this is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. To be able to afford quality infant toddler care with the ratios and licensing requirements, as well as wanting to offer quality, it's very important to know, I mean, you can go for early Head Start expansion, just straight expansion, if your needs assessment and your community action plan show that need. I have found, as the partnership money came out last time, that we were able to use our state funding and the early Head Start partnership dollars to expand, for example, in our migrant and seasonal Head Start infant toddler programs, to be able to go from 4 in the morning till 5 at night. And we were able, with the partnership, to go more days, for example, than originally we would have been, that we had been ever able to do before. This allowed us to go those long hours that families needed, for example, who are working in the fields, to have more weeks and more days in our service delivery. Now, on the regional early Head Start side, we had a couple of other options. We, for example, if you have an early childhood program at your community college, where there is we are the infant lab with early Head Start and our partnership dollars at the community college. It has allowed many more of our low-income young parents to be going to school while their child is in our early Head Start care. And then we've even grown to having 4 slots. I'm going to use some numbers so you know you don't, I know it says you've got to have 72, but, and you can use a combination of ways to get to 72, depending on the size of your county or your service area. So for us, we have 8 early Head Start infants at the college lab. Now in the infant-toddler collaboration with the college toddler program, we pay for 4 slots. And one of the comments was you don't want the families and children to feel in a segregated situation. So at our college, everybody's there, all the parents are going to school, and we link with the subsidy child care program, which our agency also operates. So those are just a couple of ideas of the other last one would be working with family networks in your community and bringing the enhancements and the regulations of early Head Start to family child care. That is a very long process, and that's why it's really helpful that whoever's funded has 18 months to get all this in play. So I'll stop at that point because Jim may have some thoughts from other grantees that he's aware of.
I have 3 comments on the slide before you that says FOA criteria. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, go back to the slide that was on before, please. Yeah. So the targeting zip codes and promise zones, the list of the zip codes that have more than 33% people below the federal poverty level and the list of promise zone locations are in the appendices to the FOA. So right. You just go back to the back end of this application, and you can find out whether your counties are considered for purposes of this application to have high concentrations of poverty or if you're in a promise zone area. Secondly, the last point that Jarl made here, prioritize organizations that seek to develop a unified birth-to-school entry continuum through alignment, et cetera. This is the key overlying umbrella concept for this whole strategy, is that they are trying to pull everything together into a unified, and it's actually prenatal to school entry, but it's birth to school entry continuum in every community. My opinion is this is where federal policy is going. All of the research in recent years of brain research, nutrition research, adverse childhood experiences, parenting, skill enhancement, et cetera, are all aligned and pointed in this direction. I think you're going to see a continued federal investment in this activity. Another point I want to make is that we know what wraparound funding is, where you've got Head Start kids in the morning under Head Start standards, and then they shift to state preschool or some other form of care in the afternoon under a different set of standards, but that all kids in a given setting are operating under the same set of standards. This program is different in that the standards follow the kid. So you could have, as in Biz's example, 4 kids in one child care setting that are under the new partnership model with early Head Start standards applying to them, and you could have 2 kids in that setting under the state child care standards. So this is a challenge in terms of tracking, but the money follows the kid, not the classroom per se. And the standards follow the kid, not the classroom per se. It creates a challenge, and some programs may find it easier in conjunction with their partnership with their child care provider to have the same set of standards for all kids in a setting, but it doesn't have to operate that way.
And yet, Jim, in my college example, we actually have a collaborative with the center supervisor there, and we are doing everything under early Head Start for everybody. And some of our dollars are helping that college toddler classroom meet those standards.
That's right. The origins of this program were that you've got some 160,000 kids in early Head Start, some 400,000 kids in the Child Care Development Block Grant child care system managed by states for the primary purpose of enabling parents to go to work. And the Congress suddenly had this insight that we need to port early Head Start standards into the child care delivery system. So right. The assumption here is that by whichever pathway you choose, you are going to be bringing early Head Start standards and practices into the state child care system. This whole option of just expanding your early Head Start or adding more early Head Start is kind of a late entry here, in that the original concept was, let's bring early Head Start standards into the state child care delivery systems, and they found that they couldn't do that fast enough to absorb all of the money, so they added this feature of, well, you can just create a new early Head Start or expand your existing Head Start as a strategy. So I'll stop there.
But I wanted to, with Jim, when he was talking about the unified birth to school entry, even if you decide that you want to go, as Jim has just explained, for just the Early Head Start expansion, it doesn't let you off the hook of not partnering. You have to still be show the patchwork or the quilt or the unity of early care and education in your particular community, whether it's a county or a city, wherever your zip codes or whatever focus on. You have to still indicate that you are part with this new Early Head Start for 24 children, for example. You are still connected to the community's early care and education subsidy program, or whoever else runs Head Start, maybe in the preschool 3 to 5-year-olds. You still have to explain how you are part of that bigger picture that Jim just spoke about.
That's right. So when you look at the way states manage the child care system, it's as varied as the criteria that community action agencies use for distributing food. Every state is different. Many states have unique, or what we might even consider odd, requirements around the number of hours or co-pays or whatever. So this is very much a state-specific program. And in some states, the challenges of working with the child care delivery system are such that just straight expansion of Early Head Start may be your best approach.
All right, so with that, folks, before we move on to the next slide and the next set of criteria, obviously as Biz and Jim were talking, this is a very complex grant application. Do folks have any questions for them, or any other questions about those criteria that we've gone through so far?
We did have someone who typed into the chat window talking about the expansion. If they do not currently have a center-based Early Head Start, can they include that in their expansion? So it would be not so much an expansion as implementation piece.
Do they currently have Head Start?
It says they don't have center-based Head Start, so I would assume otherwise, but welcome to add in other information, either through the chat or by raising the hand. And
yes, I think they could add a center-based Early Head Start under this FOA.
And just have to go by the licensing requirements for your state as far as group size, infants, and toddlers. In California, we have to have groups of 8. So it's different in different states to meet your licensing requirements and staffing requirements based on the ages of the children.
Great, and we did get that extra information validation, however you want to look at it, that they do in fact have Head Start and Early Head Start, it's just not center-based.
Is it only child care based?
It's home-based.
Or maybe it's home-based.
Yeah, so they could add center-based.
Definitely. Especially you've got the requirements down, even with we have some home visiting Early Head Start too, and if you know those requirements, you would be in a good position to add to your program a center-based Early Head Start project.
All right, so Kathy, unless there are any other questions that have come in, why don't we go to the next set of criteria?
Sure can, and keep any of those questions coming as we continue to plow through this.
All right. So again, the FOA also says that they will prioritize applicants that show evidence of leadership in supporting broad-scale impact to leverage resources and increase supply of services. So again, if you have any collective impact initiatives related to early care and education, this would definitely be where you would talk about those in your grant application. Certainly, you should probably reference the partnerships that you have. And again, if you, for example, serve as a backbone agency in a community collaborative or in a similar position of leadership around early care and education, you should definitely make sure your grant application includes that information. Then the next bullet, the FOA says it will prioritize rural areas, meaning non-metropolitan counties with significant early care and education needs. So if you do have those rural areas in your service area, you should definitely make sure to call those out in your application. And then finally, all applicants must consider birth to 5 continuum of care and education and leverage resources from existing community agencies that provide early care and education services. And the FOA lists things like early intervention, home visiting, and preschool. So again, make sure that you talk about how you leverage those additional resources through your partnerships, through community collaboratives, and again, through any kind of collective impact strategies that you already have in place or plan to do as part of the grant application. So let me stop talking there and see if Jim and Biz have some additional comments. And I know, Biz, you had talked to me earlier a little bit about the importance of early care and education in rural areas. Anything to add on that particular point?
I would just urge you, if you are in rural areas that are in need of even a smaller program, I would venture to say you could go in for less than $72. The people at the Office of Head Start are working so hard. They have rural areas that have had no bidding in the past. So it's a good time for, and Ann Linehan herself, who did a workshop with us about early Head Start and community action, that this is where they really need us as community action agencies to step up. We know our rural communities. So the door is open to you. Please really seriously consider it.
That's right, and the list of counties that are considered rural is listed in the on a state-by-state basis in one of the appendices. I want to reinforce the point Biz made about, in some cases, a community action agency may have lost a Head Start program, and now there's no Head Start, early Head Start program in that county. The Office of Head Start says, whether you have any Head Start experience or not, or even if you've had a bad experience, think about applying, especially in rural areas.
And Biz, do you have any examples from CapFlow of those types of partnerships and relationships you've been able to build to leverage additional resources at that last point is talking about that other folks on the call might think about?
Well, I used one now with our community college. That's a center-based program. But we have in little rural areas in California where we have migrant and seasonal Head Start, where we don't have big facilities that we can rent, or churches are taken or they aren't renting. We have been developing now for about 18 years family child care networks. And I must say that some of our migrant mothers have begun, as they would volunteer in our centers, as they travel, you know, they get experience. So we have helped develop small business in migrant Head Start and regional early Head Start for family child care providers to be, you know, licensed for 6. They can only have 2 children in California, 2 and under. So we have to, we can only have 2 of our infants with them, but it has been worth it, and it's more work, but it's increasing capacity in the community to offer quality services when you may not have thought about it in a small rural area. And the folks are becoming very adept and knowledgeable about the standards. I will say one thing. This program, no matter which model you operate, takes weekly monitoring and a lot of startup training and ongoing training to keep your quality at the point that early Head Start is to be offered in these different partnerships. We also collaborate with some of our migrant housing authority facilities, and so when migrant families are traveling and hit Stockton and Lodi, for example, we operate April through about October, November in that area, and we have been partnering with Stanislaus, so you can think about your neighboring agencies too, or county offices of education. Stanislaus County Office of Education is our partner in San Joaquin County with our state migrant, our migrant Head Start, and their migrant Head Start. You've got to have everything laid out and contracts and MOUs square, but anybody really is a potential partner. The other would be, do you have a private program that a church is running? Sometimes, you know, here we have a Methodist church, and they are open to having some subsidy for some of the children. So it's kind of mixing and matching what meets that needs assessment. It all goes back to your needs assessment and your local community action plan as to what you could offer. The possibilities are really endless. Just think outside the box.
Great. And so do we have, with all of that said, do we have any additional questions? And also, before we go to the next slide, and also, do we have any agencies on the phone who are currently not providing early Head Start services but are planning on beginning to provide them through, if they get this grant funding, through the grant support? And you can either indicate that by putting your hand up or just typing into the chat window, because we definitely want to make sure that we're providing some extra technical assistance through the partnership to those agencies that might just, or maybe in the last year, started an early Head Start program and are looking to expand it through this program, but are still sort of getting that early Head Start set of services up and running. Is there anybody on the line who falls into that category?
And as Joel mentioned, you can either raise hand or put a quick note in the chat window on the right side panel. I haven't seen anything that has come in thus far, other than we do have another question to address.
And Kasia, what is the question that's come in?
Sure. So given that we have a 75 page count cap on this, which includes your letters of support, are there any tips that you guys have for maximizing your points while minimizing your links as you write this?
I've got two. One is on page 16 in the FOA, there's a hot link to a toolkit for completing the application, and I think the resources at that hot link are very, very helpful. Secondly, we did a webinar with the people who had already received these awards a couple weeks ago, and our rough guesstimate is that it takes about 200 hours of time, clock time, staff time, et cetera, to complete one of these applications. As Jarrell mentioned early on, these are very complicated programs. The FOA is complicated. It asks for a lot of information. So you've got to summarize, rather than devote a page to something, you've got to give the central idea in 2 or 3 sentences or a short paragraph.
Right, and again, making sure that you bullet, or when you do your outline for this, one of the challenges, I think, certainly for some of the grants that we've written at the partnership for OCS is that information is laid out in sort of overlapping information is laid out in different places in the FOA. So I think making sure you've done a close read of the entire FOA, and that what we literally did was put the information in columns side by side by side because, again, it shows up in different places in the text, sometimes in slightly different versions asking you for slightly different kinds of information. So making sure that you've got that comprehensive list of each section in the FOA, because, again, you're looking for that overlap between where they're giving you instructions on what you need to reply to. And so that really helps to have your outline very, very clearly set before you're writing. And I think that helps you with that overall page count. And then, as Jim said, make sure that you avail yourselves to those tools that are online to help you with that application.
And to show you how old-fashioned I am, or maybe just old, I like to print these things out and literally tape them on the wall in a conference room so that you can visualize the whole thing, and you will discover that in some cases you've used virtually the same language in answering two different questions, which means you can shorten one of them and put in a parenthesis, please say, answer to section 24 on page 44 or something to send them back to the longer explanation.
Right, you must adhere to the limits, so be as concise and have different readers of your different sections, you know, on your Head Start team. Maybe you have a grant writer that's helping you, but have different people read it so that if something doesn't make sense to one of them, they ask you, and because you get so buried in this kind of thing that you sort of just, I just want to fill out the page. Well, every inch is so precious in this complex application. The toolkit, as mentioned, use that toolkit. They developed it for a reason.
All right, so any other questions from folks before we move on?
Not at this point, but keep them coming as we go through these last couple of slides here.
Great. So a couple of additional key points that we pulled out from the FOA. Again, in a number of places, it emphasizes that the applicant must operationalize services to ensure there is no segregation or stigmatization of those early Head Start child care partnership children. So again, children who are receiving these additional services, so home visitation, provision of diapers, health and nutrition, mental health services, health tracking, and individualized support services. And it also talks about, again, that distinction between layered funding and wraparound funding. Biz and Jim addressed this a little bit earlier, but again, these are definitely terms of art. I've certainly heard wraparound funding used in in different ways in other contexts, so making sure you're very familiar with how it's talked about in that FOA, and making sure that you talk about your use of that layered funding approach, and again, making sure that the layered funding integrates those additional resources and services for that seamless full-day, full-year comprehensive services. And in the text of the FOA, it highlights an ACS-IM attachment A, so we definitely encourage folks to make sure that you've read that before you start writing about it. Again, just making sure that you're using these terms in the way that they are defined within the FOA, because again, you hear about wraparound services, you hear different terms of art talking about blending and braiding funding. So again, very important that you're very clear on what the FOA is asking in terms of that funding strategy. So Biz and Jim, anything else, any other tips that you can give the agencies for addressing either of those bullets?
Make sure your budget speaks to the narrative of what you're trying to operate. That will bring into account your layered services. And if you're using, for example, some state funding, that turns into in-kind for this program.
And I would just restate that the funding and the standards follow the child, and within a given setting, you can have some kids under this program using the funding from this initiative and they are receiving services that are different from the services that some other child in that same classroom or home-based setting may be receiving. That's a tough concept for us to deal with in community action because we're so used to homogeneous standards and services within a setting, but in this case, the rules and the money follows the children.
And Biz and Jim, any suggestions about how they can, how the applicants can talk about how they'll avoid that problem of stigmatization or segregation? I think Jim, you were just getting at that a little bit, but any suggestions for how they might address that first bullet?
It's tough.
Yeah. It's a great question.
I'm caught a little flat-footed.
Me too. Wow. Segregation is.
Yeah, and any thoughts from folks on the line? If you've already started writing about that, any suggestions or strategies?
In some cases, the EHSCC partnership children are going to be receiving services that other children, especially in a child care setting, are not receiving. First of all, there's an excellent chance that the non-EHSCC children won't, and their parents will not know about the additional services if they're being done individually or in a home-based setting. They might know about them if it's in a classroom setting. And
now, what I have to say that I guess what we have done to avoid all this is whatever we are enhancing, if it's a state-funded project, we then are able to do all of the medical for everybody in the classroom. We have never approached it as not offering, in this last partnership, Early Head Start, we are offering everything to all children in, whether it's that home or at the college. I mean, we are trying to enhance the child care, like Linda Smith said, we want to bring the quality of child care up and improve the children's experiences, their health, their parent involvement. So we have really applied it across the board. And that takes—
if you can make that happen, that's a good way to do it if you can do it.
It's the best practice. So if, when you're looking at braiding some of these funding opportunities with what you currently have or how your partner has state money or the subsidy program will subsidize your children, certain, depending on their income levels, if there is a chance, we even use our state money to do the fees for the Head Start children in the part of the day where a family from Head Start is not going to have the money to pay the parent fee, for example. So you really get into the weeds on this, and if you can offer to everyone the full enhancement, that's the best practice.
Yes.
Great. So Tasha, maybe advance to the next slide.
Well, there is a quick question here about layered funding that I wanted to bring up. Someone is asking about that requirement to use layered funding. Is that just for doing the Early Head Start expansion, or is that more general to the program?
No, that's only for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership children. The Early Head Start children presumably would all be under the same standards and funding, and whether they're in a classroom or home-based setting.
Yeah, all qualify for everything.
Yes.
With federal dollars that you're applying for.
Great, thanks. And while we were talking, we did actually have a request. If you could expound, I assume this will go to Biz here, expound on the college collaboration relative to the types of services they offer to a child care center on a college campus.
This is a community college, and so we are part with the Early Head Start 8 infants we have, we offer our full, everything that Early Head Start requires, including we have the moms in part of a, prenatal, postnatal project. They're able to go to school on campus, and we have then a laboratory for teaching future teachers. It's like the unintended consequence. It's very positive. In the toddler program, where we pay for 4 slots, we have been able to use our money to enhance the outdoor environment, new shade structures, pay for the other teacher in their classroom, and then they've gone to state training together. We've done local training for all the college the early care and education teachers, as well as our Early Head Start and toddler program. Mm-hmm. Now we've just been able to add a classroom of 3 to 5-year-olds that are our Head Start children who are bused there in case their families don't have that transportation and have linked with carpools for their parents. So this is kind of new that we now have infants, toddlers. It's grown to be 0 to 5 right at that college campus, but it's taken us about 6 years. So I would say having a good relationship with your early childhood department at the college, if early childhood is part of their curriculum for students, that's your link. Either early childhood, human development, or family studies. Check out your community colleges and your housing authorities. They have very similar mission-driven collaborative possibilities. For example, we pay the rent on that toddler's classroom, okay? So anyway, I could go on and on about it. It's been quite a nice laboratory for us to learn from each other and provide quality services.
And if folks have follow-up questions, again, because this is such a complex application and you want a little bit more information, just send those to me directly at jcrocker@communityactionpartnership.com, and I will forward them or otherwise connect you to Biz and Jim, again, to go into some additional detail.
Happy to help. Take that seriously.
Sure. All right, Tasha, next slide. Perfect. So again, last set of key points. Grantees are required to plan for transition of children out of Early Head Start, including assisting families with subsidized preschool options through agreements with publicly funded Head Start, pre-K, and child care programs. So make sure you're addressing that transition as those kids move on to those pre-K programs or Head Start programs and other child care programs. Also, grantees should also work with home visiting or home-based programs to assure children can transition after receiving Early Head Start child care home visiting services. So in addition to that transition, as those kids age out into Head Start programs and pre-K programs, you also need to address that transition with home visiting or other home-based programs. Also, ACF is setting no minimum slots. Again, so they do suggest that you try to at least offer a minimum of 72 slots, but they do specifically say they know that's not always possible in rural areas. So again, as Biz emphasized, if you are serving a significant amount of rural communities in your service area, again, you don't have to hit that 72 target, which is just, it sounds like a rule of thumb, but you might want to talk about the overall need compared to the overall availability of those early care and education opportunities in your community, again, just to provide that context to explain why you're only offering under that 72 slot number. And again, you should see the required services on page 10 through 12. There is a significant list of the required services that you need to provide. So again, just making sure that you're very detailed in going through that list and calling out in your application where you are where and how you are providing those services. So Biz and Jim, anything to add, especially about those top two bullets about the transition into other early care and education programs, those pre-K and Head Start programs, and then the home visiting transition?
I would just encourage you that with your application and how you respond to this, it would be helpful if you could include you know, not letters of support really, but letters or an MOU of understanding that when the children are going to be hitting 3 in this community, you know, we're going to be working with ABC, blah, 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 whatever program, or if you operate Head Start, it's much easier. The one person who spoke or put the info in earlier in our topics here mentioned they have Head Start, and so most of us plan to do transition from early Head Start, and then the 3-year-olds slide into our, you know, our Head Start program. If you don't have that, you need to show that you are linked with a state child development center. Don't forget our special needs children too, and I encourage you, in California we have what's called Early Start, where children with a special need can get support services, but that ends at 3, and so you need a partnership with that kind of a program as well to add to the transition of a 3-year-old with a special need into an appropriate, supportive early care and education environment. The one thing it depends on is you need to know who these people are, these programs in your community, so you can articulate your transition, and don't just make it up. They will check. You've got to have real, you have to, at meetings, you've got to know who these people are, okay? Maybe it's your county office. Maybe your pre-K is run out of your elementary school. Go visit those people. Call them on the phone. Give them a draft MOU. Tie them down.
Do we have any questions from folks about those, especially about those top 2 bullets?
Nothing that's come in thus far.
All right, so advance to the last slide. And again, we just wanted to conclude by seeing if there are any general questions, again, on that section of the FOA that talks about the grantee level responsibilities. So again, those are partnerships and other, and again, a long list of bullets. The Early Head Start Child Care Center partner responsibilities, and any questions related to that startup and implementation period. Again, as Biz explained, you've got 18 months to get this up and running. So we just wanted to see if there were any wrap-up questions folks had, again, about those sections of the FOA, the responsibilities for the grantee, the responsibilities for your partners, and then anything about that startup and implementation period.
Jarl, on startup,
Yes.
I just want to throw out, don't be skimpy in your startup budget. Look at if you're in a partnership one, you may have to fund a whole new renovation or something, or new furniture. Don't be skimpy.
Right.
Always deal with a budget revision later.
Right, you've got two budgets here. One is the base budget, what it's going to cost you to operate this. The second is the startup budget, which is a separate budget that you prepare in the course of this application.
All right, so any concluding questions from folks on the line about either those different sets of responsibilities, the implementation and startup period, or any other concluding questions?
Jarl, I do see that somebody asked about if this is being recorded, and yes, Cashin has recorded the whole hour webinar.
That is
yes, so
correct, and it will be available tomorrow along with the slides.
So if I read this FOA correctly, the applications for this round are due August 24th at 4:30. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that means you've got about 30 work days between now and then, which means you've got to have 1 or 2 people working a substantial amount of their clock time between now and then to get this thing together. And remember, it's summertime, so you've got some people that are partners that may have be on vacation or even closed temporarily, but you need letters from them.
Yeah, it's an excellent reminder, Jim, to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row now or in the next week or so, getting those requests out, again, because of folks' summer schedules and the importance of those partnerships and your partners in the application process.
Remember your asset of your community action plan. You'll be able to lift parts of your needs assessment to indicate why you want to begin operating Early Head Start. I had one other last fleeting thought. I apologize. In our county, we are in 2 continuation high schools where the kids are, the parents, young parents, have Early Head Start right on their campus. It means they then can be going to finish high school. They're there, they can nurse the children, the dads are involved, so that's another community where you can bring in your school district backing, and they usually will provide the classroom and the yard area. So another outreach for you with Early Head Start and teen parents. I'm sorry I forgot that sooner.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Biz. So, Cashin, do we have any concluding questions from folks?
We don't have anything in the lineup right now, but that's why I switched back to our first page here to remind everybody that if you have any lingering questions or something that comes up in your writing, do come to us at the partnership. Jarl's address, email address is up on the screen for you now, and we'll answer what we can or turn to some of our experts here like Jarl and Biz, Jim and Biz to answer for you, so don't be shy.
Great.
The cost per child, you know, Jim, you're a fiscal person for OHS, but I would say 10 to 12 to 14,000 a year per child. Would I be in the right boat?
Yep. Yes.
So don't shortchange yourself in operations.
That's right. Do it right.
Do it quality.
Great, and thank you so much, Jim and Biz. This is just really invaluable for folks to be able to benefit from all of your knowledge working with early care and education programs. And again, the partnership is dedicated to serving all of our agencies, especially ones that need any kind of additional help or support with this application. So please don't hesitate to reach out directly to us, and we'll make sure that we connect you hopefully to folks that can help you with the application and get your questions answered. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon or morning. And again, look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you so much.
Good luck, everyone.